Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Thank you, Dan. You are listening to the Seattle Shrimp Tank, streaming live to you on Facebook. And you can catch us every other week on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time from the virtual Whedon Unleashed studio here on Facebook until we resume broadcasting in our physical studio. I'm Brad Berger, along with my esteemed co-host Dan Whedon, and you can always catch a replay of the podcast at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle, and now through iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And don't forget, you can still subscribe to our podcast on iTunes so you never miss an episode. And if you are subscribed to any of those services, please rate our podcast. Your feedback helps us grow and improve. Our guest for today's podcast is Mary Copeland, founder and owner of Compass and Clock. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Dan. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. How you doing, Dan?
Hello, Brad. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
I don't know where you. I think you might be in Tacoma. You might be in Bellevue. I'm here in Paulsboro. We don't get to be together anymore. But as I look outside the window, I think November is here.
Yes. All of a sudden, the beautiful bluebird days that we had over the weekend snapped, and here we are back into our traditional fall weather.
Hey, listen, if it's okay with you, I have an event that's coming up that before we dive into talking with Mary, I wanted to get out to our podcast listeners because This will be the last time that we do this before it comes up. It's a free webinar, and I wanted to give a little bit of information, and I'll make it available on the Facebook page. Myself and a couple of colleagues will be doing a webinar titled The Growing Fraud Crisis, Prevention and Protection for Your Business. Brad, as you know, as a business owner, and Mary probably does too, unfortunately, there are many more ways to create fraud in a digital world. And so Catherine Colbank is from First Citizens Bank in Bellevue. Jennifer Hill is with DataWorks, which is a managed service provider. We're going to talk about, and I'm going to talk about insurance. So we're going to talk about ways to prevent, to mitigate. They've got some great tools and strategies. And if all else fails, you might actually need some insurance. So that growing fraud crisis, prevention and protection for your business is going to be Wednesday, November 18th, 2 weeks from today. And Brad, it is before our regular podcast. So I'm going to be very busy on the cyberspace airwaves that day, 11:45 to 12:30. So all of you sign up for the webinar, come see me then, and then stick around because I'll be back later for the podcast. But I do appreciate the quick promo. So if you're a business owner, we're going to talk about fraud and ways to avoid that. Jennifer Hill from DataWorks, Catherine Colbank from First Citizens Bank will be my fellow panelists, and that's what we're going to be doing. So, Brad, thanks for that.
Well, Dan, at the end of this, as well as on our video wrap up, we're going to ask an important question of Mary, and I'm going to pose that question to you because either I was asleep while you were sharing this with us, which I don't think I was, or I missed it, or maybe you didn't. But how would we sign up?
You'd think literally, I'm going to tell you, Brett, this came together like about 30 minutes ago.
Okay.
And so Catherine over at First Citizens, she's putting together the registration.
Great. So you'll post that on
I'm going to post, right? I didn't say it very well. I'm going to post that on our Facebook page.
All right.
Actually, if you follow me in any way, you're going to see it. So I'm not in charge of the registration. Catherine is.
All right.
So I promise all of you out there, you will get it. And I'm glad you didn't fall asleep, Brad. That would be bad.
Well, that was a great pivot.
Great pivot. So listen, I'm going to pivot back to you. I met Mary Copeland. Man, Mary, I think it's probably been 3 years now, 2 or 3 years. Richard Tizano, who is the father of one of our past guests, Carly Tizano. Richard and I have known each other for years, and Richard has utilized Mary's services and is a close friend of hers. And Richard, after he heard us interview Carly, sent me an email and says, remember Mary? I think she'd be great on your show. And here she is.
All right, so Mary, we are so glad to have you here, and I hope that you know that we're just having some good fun here. So Mary was born in Brooklyn, New York, and grew up on Long Island. She attended the Fashion Institute of Technology, earned an AA in fashion buying and merchandising, and continued for another 2 years in the marketing program. When Mary was 23, she moved to Columbus, Ohio. There's stuff going on there too. And that's where she met her husband, whom she has been with for 31 years. They have 2 children and have been living on Bainbridge Island for 20 years. Mary was a buyer for just shy of 25 years, but in 2006, she needed to make a career change due to the travel and that her kids were toddlers. Mary took her relationship building and retail skills and applied it to her new job at North Kitsap Herald, where she sold advertising as a marketing representative. In November of 2013, a client of Mary's from the North Kitsap Herald reached out to her via LinkedIn, wanting to discuss a potential marketing project. And that LinkedIn message set the course for where she is today, helping seniors and their families in the West Sound. Mary's goal is to provide folks 40 and older with free information as it pertains to aging well in advance to avoid a crisis mode and enjoy their journey. Compass and Clock was launched on January 1st of 2018. This business is a legacy to Mary's mom. Mary started her own company because her mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2008. And Mary feels that if she knew then what she knows now, her parents' quality of life together for the last 5 years of her mom's life would have been so much better. Compass and Clock is a free multimedia program designed to help other families have access to information and resources through a variety of mediums so that can make smart decisions and achieve a better future. Mary believes that she is not the expert on all matters that pertain to aging, but she surrounds herself with experts so as a team they can help their neighbors. Welcome, Mary, to the Seattle Shrimp Tank.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Dan, for inviting me today.
Oh, you're welcome. So Mary, it's interesting because both Brad and I are well over 40 at this point. And because Brad's goal is to have everybody live, beyond into 100.
Absolutely.
You have a great audience here to talk about. I think what's a really important part of a growing part of everybody's lives are people are living longer and the resources and the needs. And when I heard in the bio, because I had this happen with my parents, the needs that you wish you knew then. My first question to you is this. What is the biggest misconception you found regarding some of the services and resources for people as they age? Is there a misconception or is there what's the biggest challenge?
I don't know so much that it would be a misconception. It's just what it comes down to is you don't know what you don't know. And you can't ask questions of folks if you don't even know the questions to ask to begin with. So for example, when my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I was visiting at Christmas time. I believe it was Christmas of 2010. And Dad said, I'm thinking of selling the house. And there is a assisted living community I'd like you to take a look at. So my sister Kathleen was there with me. So off we went to go see this place with Mom and Dad. And it seemed wonderful. Oh, what a nice place. Well, I didn't know that there were questions I should have asked. Yeah. And because I didn't ask those questions, my mother and father sold their house, moved in. And the reason Dad wanted to move there was he needed help getting my mother out of bed in the morning. He would have a hard time getting her awake. And sometimes, she might not get up till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And they moved in. There was a $10,000 deposit, non-refundable, $3,000 a month for rent, and 1 meal a day. So they moved in and he says, okay, I need help getting Sandy up in the morning. And they said, oh, we don't have the staff to help with that. what do you do with that? So, you needed to be prepped with questions to ask, do you have caregivers that can help with these tasks? Um, the list just goes on and on. And so I was blindsided by that. And it was a big miss. And again, though, my head was in childcare. I'm raising two toddlers. I didn't know anything about senior care. So then all of this, I'm learning more as I happen to be connected with Mr. Richard Tizano, the elder law attorney. And, that's what started the journey, my mom and Richard's phone call. And when he called me, I said, I needed this information 3 years ago from my parents because they wound up moving out of that place. They were out $43,000. The quick story would be if we knew then what we knew that now, they would have stayed in their single story home, which is a great floor plan for folks aging in place. They could have invested that $43,000 into in-home care agencies for a number of years, just coming in a few days a week for a few hours, helping mom get out of bed in the morning and giving dad that respite that was stressing him out. Maybe if they needed more money, they could have done a reverse mortgage on their house. But, this is all what I know now, and I didn't know it then. So I think really people don't know the questions to ask.
So, Mary, I see behind you a banner with the name of your company as well as a tagline there. And my question that I wanted to start off with as I was preparing for our show today is, tell us a little bit about how we came up with the compass and clock, because I'm sure that there's something behind that.
There is. So when Mr. Tizano linked me in November of 2013, and I went in to talk to him about that marketing project, it was to be an advertising rep for a magazine and help launch it on this side here in Kitsap County area. And I was emotionally invested, so I took on the project. And the name of the magazine was called Aging Options. And as I would bring the magazine around, because I did launch it that August of 2014, when I would bring the magazine around, it would publish once a year. I'd bring it to these different places of business where people could have access to it. And people would say, aging options, ha, ha, ha. I didn't know I had an option. Well, you do. And so I just knew that when I started my business, that it was crucial that we connect with the adult children. So that's why I say 40 and older, because from my own personal experience, my parents came to my sisters and I, and they asked us questions. And if we don't have the knowledge to help support them and guide them, then, that's not going to work. So nowadays, more and more parents are turning to their kids and asking questions. So I knew I needed to stay away from the word aging. I wanted to stay away from the word seniors, and I wanted to stay, away from elderly. So I needed to come up with something that meant guidance and support and navigation, which is compass, and clock, tick tock, tick tock. Let's face it, we're all aging at the same rate, one day at a time. And that's how the name came up. And as I was playing with it, I reached out to my sister, who also has a marketing background and career. And she helped me with the tagline to help illustrate what compass and clock meant.
We could probably commiserate quite a bit. My parents both went through assisted living, and this was now a number of years ago, and they're both passed now. But as you talk about you don't know what you don't know. How do you, as the owner and founder of Compass and Clock, and you use it really in a sense, a traditional magazine, how are you getting the word out to those kids? I think especially the kids, because I think of myself in that role. How are you getting the word out to them that you've got some really great resources and information that will help them to help guide their parents?
Well, I think one of the ways is through connections. People tell me I'm a connector. I love people. So COVID right now, not being able to see people in person all the time is kind of a bummer for me. But I go when you are able to attend meetings in person. Right now, they've moved to virtual. There are 3 or 4 networking groups I attend each month because I'm not the expert in those neighborhoods. So there's one that I attend in Gig Harbor, one in Port Townsend, one up in Sequim, Kitsap, etc. So aligning yourself with others that are serving the same audience is key. Another way is obviously when I publish the magazine twice a year, I am the one that does all the distribution myself. So I'm walking into different places of business, talking to complete strangers, introducing myself and letting them know what this magazine is all about, and that I want to put it in a place where people have access to it because they're going to wait around for a few minutes, whether that's a Les Schwab tire or a healthcare provider's office, senior center, etc. So it's about placement, it's about people. Of course, there's all online, the website itself, social media, taking advantage of the reach that you can get with that. And then I do events too, or like even upcoming over the next 2 weeks, I'm going to do 5 pet food and supply drives for the humane societies in Kitsap County and Clallam County. So I'll be out there in the public, available for people to ask me questions, say hello, they'll make their donation, I'll give them a magazine, and I'll have some volunteers with me, Compass and Clock members. So if they want to ask somebody a question about Medicare, I've got a Medicare person there because right now it's open enrollment. So just trying to be visible to the community, get out there, interact with them, align yourself with other professionals, social media, etc.
Okay. Well, we have to align ourselves with a commercial break. So we are going to take that commercial break to hear from our sponsors. And when we come back with our guest, Mary Copeland, founder and owner of Compass and Clock, for our Hot or Not section of the show, we're going to find out what she thinks about liquidation. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Seattle Shrimp Tank.
The Seattle Shrimp Tank is brought to you by IdealLife360.com. What would it be like to be in the best shape of your life, both physically and mentally, every day for the rest of your life? Have awesome relationships with the people you care about most, never having to worry about money again. What would it be like if you received a letter out of the blue and suddenly discovered you had 20 more years to live than you ever imagined? What would you do with those extra years of your life? How many lives would you touch? What kind of legacy would you leave behind? What changes would you make today knowing you had 20 more years in your future? What new big challenges would you take on? What would be next? Text the word IDEAL to 89800 and discover how to rethink, redefine, and reinvent the best years of your life.
Welcome back to the Seattle Shrimp Tank from the virtual Whedon Unleashed studio, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in Seattle and the greater Puget Sound area. I'm Brad Berger, along with my esteemed co-host Dan Whedon. Remember, you can always catch a replay of the podcast at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite streaming service: iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. For our next segment, Hot or Not.
And of course, rate us a 5 when you do that. Hot or Not is sponsored by Shrimp Peeler sponsors West Sound Workforce, Port Ludlow Resort, Kitsap Economic Development Alliance, SJ Graphics, and the Kitsap Sun newspaper. Mary, I know you've listened to a couple of our episodes at the least, and know that Hot or Not is where Brad and I pepper you with some questions about your business, about life, and then you're going to tell us if it's hot or not and why. So, Mary, hot or not, liquidating your assets and gifting to a family member so you can take advantage of state and federal aid.
Hot.
Okay.
So there are times where, let's face it, it's a silver tsunami right now.
Right.
10,000 people are turning 65 every day. So the last baby boomer in 2030 will be 65, and 20% of our population in the US will be 65 and older. in order to live a long, healthy life, it's expensive. And not everybody has that financial means to sustain all of that. So there are times when folks need to become Medicaid eligible. And in order to do that, you should be working with a estate planning attorney and learn how to protect your assets and transfer from one spouse to the other spouse, and the one that needs the help, they can then spend down and become Medicaid eligible so that the whole family unit isn't left penniless.
Well, Mary, as an entrepreneur, right, and somebody who's been, had a wonderful corporate career and decided to kind of venture out on their own to create their own company, my hot or not question really has to do, and there's a follow-on to this, is how important is it to have a clear business plan as you launch into a new business?
Very, very hot. Without that financial plan, you need that roadmap in order to sustain your business. So every year I build a new financial plan and I plug in what I think where the dollars are going to be spent on, and I have to figure out where the income is coming from. And I stick really closely to that. If I didn't, the business still wouldn't be here.
So,
and each year's
and that-
different.
Yeah, so I'm interested since as I was reading your bio at the introduction, a lot of your services are free. Your magazine is free. You've got media that's free. So I guess the question is for anybody, other budding entrepreneurs out there, how does that pencil out for you?
So far, so good. I do everything for free because I think it's the right thing to do. When I launched Compass and Clock, I did it for the people. I didn't do it for the money. I did it because I thought it was the right thing to do because I needed the information several years ago. So I don't want to get all teary on you or anything, but there are folks out there that are struggling right now. And I don't think it should cost them any money to have access to information. And, printing the magazine, yes, there's an expense to that, but putting all the information online, there's not necessarily an expense for that. It takes my time, but there's a lot of free online avenues in which to put the information. Yes, there's a cost to my website, an annual cost, but it's nominal considering. And it's just the right thing to do, even so much so that with COVID right now, there are folks that aren't necessarily leaving their house and they can't access the magazine. They could read it online if they are tech savvy, not because it's difficult to read my magazine online. I made it a new format, so I invested in that so that it was even easier. But some seniors just aren't tech savvy. So in the new issue, oops, sorry.
Yeah. Does your magazine have advertisers?
The magazine does have what I call members,
Okay.
which are advertisers, and that revenue is solely what fuels the entire company.
Got it.
And next year for 2021, I put a full page advertisement in the magazine that said, for the first 500 people that subscribe, I will mail you the magazine next year, because I think people aren't able to access it. And if they want it, I don't want to make it so that they can't get it.
So in that realm, I don't have a hot or not. I want to kind of follow up on that. Are you looking for more members? And also something I guess that would be really important for people listening, what areas what areas do you serve?
Okay, so Compass and Clock, when I launched it, I'm just completing my third year, is the West Sound right now, Gig Harbor to Port Angeles. As far as the print publication and the advertisers that are in it, and they serve outside that area also. the categories, there's 6 of them. There's legal guidance, financial planning, senior housing, healthcare, leisure pursuits, and family support. So there's a lot of professionals out there that fall into that. And all I ask is that um, people respect the fact that I don't want to saturate a category or a marketplace, because that's not fair, number one, to our audience, because then they'll be confused. Why are there, 6 of this one category, all in the same town? And it's also unfair to the members because they're not here to compete with each other. We're here to work together as a team. So there's always room for more experts to join Compass and Clock, but I vet the people, meaning that they have to hit 3 criterias for me in order for me to invite them to be part of the family. And that is, first and foremost, they have to be compassionate. They have to care about the people that they serve. They have to be experienced, and they have to be professional. Because when people have access to Compass and Clock, the goal is to help you. And I want to make sure when they're working with somebody that's part of the Compass and Clock family, that they meet their needs and beat their expectations.
And Brad, do you mind if I ask another quick question?
No, please go for it.
So, again, I think of myself, Mary, and I just think about the situation that my wife and I were in with my parents dating back now almost 10 years. And, when my dad first needed care. And I think about what we would have liked to have known. And you talk about marketing and promoting to the kids who are probably all in their 40s and 50s. Is there information in your resources that would help them plan for themselves as well? So they might have in their mind, my parents are aging, they might be in their 80s or 90s, but here's some information. Maybe I need to start thinking about, what's in store for me. Is there information for them as well?
The answer is a resounding yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Let's face it. Everybody should have access to information well in advance. I want people to learn about this early on so that they can enjoy the journey. If you're going to go on vacation, you're going to do some planning for that trip. You're going to research where you're going. You're going to look into the cost for airline tickets, look into the different options of where you're staying, how you're getting around, what are you going to do there? Well, the way I see retirement, it's that vacation. And how are you going to sustain your plans for retirement? So you need to start thinking about that early on, in your 30s, 40s, 50s. Start planning for it. So honestly, I'm 58 and my husband and I did our will 2 years ago. We should have done that way sooner. We have 2 kids that are 17 and 19 right now. I have life insurance now, and so does my husband. We've got Roth IRA. So we started doing our planning because of Compass and Clock. I was trying to educate my neighbors in the community on all of these categories and all of this. And I thought, wait a second, I need to practice what I'm preaching. So while the adult kids are there to help support their parents, they can start prepping for their journey. And I love seniors, but honestly, the audience that I'm trying to reach most is figure between 40 and 70. When somebody's 85, you got to assume that they've done their planning, or they are where they are now. And, I can try to give them some more information, but they need less than folks younger.
Yeah, Mary, one of the things that really resonates to me about what you're talking about, and I when we come back from a break, because I think we've got a break coming up pretty soon, I want to ask
2 minutes. So you got to go. We got 2 minutes before the break, so dive in, Brad.
Yeah, well, the thing that I'm a big advocate of is avoiding a crisis, right? So this is thinking ahead about the sorts of things that you need, because good decisions are rarely made in a crisis. You tend to have to sell things at liquidation prices. You tend to not make decisions that you would otherwise if you had all the information, all the facts, etc. So kudos to you for doing that, because I'm a huge believer in that in all the work that I do. The question that I have is, I'm going to go back to your bio again because I found it fascinating. You talk about if you would have known now what or know then what you know now, it would have helped those last 5 years of your parents' life together. What specifically in your particular story can you point to that says, if I would have known this, this is how it would have impacted that last 5 years?
Yeah, so I kind of touched on this before with the scenario about my mom and dad, where dad talked about selling the house. Well, what I know now that I didn't know then was aging in place in a single story home is a great floor plan. In-home agencies can come into your home. The average is $35 to $45 an hour, depending on where you live. And they can help you with ADLs, which are activities of daily living. So dad needing some help, getting mom out of bed in the morning, getting her day started. That would have kept them in their home, in their neighborhood, surrounded by their hundreds of friends that they have, because they're a very social couple. And it probably would not have hurt my mom's Alzheimer's. It would have helped because she would have been interacting on a more regular basis instead of now being isolated when they wound up moving. Reverse mortgages, if you learn about them, they can do great things and be another source of income for families.
Right.
So those types of things.
Great.
Well, the compass keeps ticking. I don't know. I was trying to make something funny out of that. That didn't work out.
The needle is swinging.
The needle is swinging to the next commercial. We're going to take a short break to hear from our sponsors. And when we come back with our guest, Mary Copeland from Compass and Clocks, she's the owner and founder, for our famous Plead the Fifth section of the show, we're going to find out about driving Miss Daisy. You're not going to want to miss the question. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Seattle Shrimp Tank.
The Seattle Shrimp Tank is brought to you by our studio sponsor, Whedon Unleashed. As a business owner, you don't have a professional life and a personal life. You have a life, and that life is full of opportunities and obstacles. For your business, it is the vehicle to fuel your life. If you run out of fuel because of a crisis, then your entire lifestyle is affected. Dan Whedon works with small and medium-sized business owners to ensure that no calamity is fatal. Dan focuses on accelerating business growth while at the same time planning and implementing strategies on preventing, mitigating, and recovering from those obstacles of business and life. Through Dan's consulting work with his partnership at First Underwriters Insurance to finance your risk, he'll make sure that you can, with confidence, unleash the value of your business and lifestyle. To get a complimentary review of your situation, call Dan at 360-271-1592 or email him at dan@danwhedon.com. Tell Dan you heard him on the Seattle Shrimp Tank podcast and receive a 20% discount on any work that is agreed to. Be unleashed and be well.
Welcome back to the Seattle Shrimp Tank from the virtual Whedon Unleashed studio, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in Seattle and the greater Puget Sound area. I'm Brad Berger, along with my esteemed co-host Dan Whedon, and you can always catch a replay of the podcast at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on whatever means that you listen to us, whether that's iTunes or iHeartRadio, Spotify, or Google Podcasts. And as Dan likes to say, don't forget to give us the 5 stars. So for our next segment, Plead the Fifth.
And Plead the Fifth is sponsored by West Sound Workforce, Port Ludlow Resort, Kitsap Economic Development Alliance, SJ Graphics, and the Kitsap Sun. So Mary, this is the time we're gonna up our game a little bit tougher questions. You have the chance to plead the fifth, but only once. So if you plead the fifth early, we might ask the really hard questions. You never know. So I mentioned driving Miss Daisy. Here's my question for you, and I chuckled because I thought I had to think about this about 10 years ago. How do you tell an elderly parent that they shouldn't drive anymore? What's your advice to those 40, 50-year-old kids that may have to have that conversation with their parents?
Well, number one, you have to respect your parents, um, and take into consideration that driving is a part of their lifestyle and a part of their independence. And if you do not think one of your aging parents should still be driving, then you need to have an honest conversation with them. Um, my dad's 86 years old. He's actually over my shoulder. He's on one of the magazine covers
Mm.
there. And my dad was visiting and he wanted to drive my car because he feels that, you know, a lot of the newer models, the aerodynamics have a lot of blind spots. He took it upon himself about a year ago to not drive in the evening if he doesn't have to, because you know, he was getting older, the glare from the headlights, etc. Now, if you have a parent that can't come to those decisions on their own, then you probably need to reach out to a third party. So there is a place right here in Gig Harbor that does a test that's called Drive Able, and it's a cognition test that they can take, and the results will give the verdict of whether that loved one should still be driving or not. You know, you just being honest with them and telling them, hey, you know, we love you, we want you to be safe, but we also don't want somebody else to get hurt. So I think honesty is always the best policy, and there are tests. AARP also offers things like that. So there's resources to help.
Well, this question, normally I would ask, has there ever been a client, you know, that you just refuse to take on? But maybe I'll put this in a different way, because I think it's important for people to understand a little bit about the various professionals that they could potentially come into. But you kind of outlined, and you don't need to name names, but you kind of outlined some of the criteria of your members. Have there ever been instances where somebody wanted to be a member and they weren't a good fit for Compass and Clock, and what kind of drew you to that particular conclusion?
Well, I was approached actually last year in 2019 by somebody that I've known probably 15 years, and they were making a change in their career. And when they started in their new area, it was financial planning, they immediately reached out to me to become part of Compass and Clock. And I basically had to say no, because if you're brand new as a financial advisor, you don't hit that experienced criteria, one of the three. And it doesn't mean that you're not a good person and you don't have good intentions, but when you're trying to help folks with their financial planning, they really need to be well versed. And I'm sure you can appreciate that, Brad, based on your private business. But I mean, I was speaking with somebody at the Port Ludlow Bay Club at one of our quarterly seminars with Mr. Tizano. And, you know, the woman was saying that she worked with a financial planner that made some errors when it came to things they should have done at the end of the year for tax purposes. So, you know, that experience is critical.
Awesome. Thank you.
You know, obviously COVID has had a shift in how people go to places where they might be considered to wait. You talked about going to businesses and having your magazines in waiting rooms and things like that. For you as an entrepreneur and the type of business you have with the biannual hard copy, even though I know it's you have it online as well, but the hard copy and that type of outreach, what kind of things has now forced you to pivot, or what have you had to pivot to based on what's happened with this pandemic and how things might look in the future?
So one of the things I had to do was up my game as it pertained to the online platform for the magazine. And I honestly was speaking with one of my sisters. I have two, and one of them, Carol Fisher, she is also a writer. She contributes an article to the magazine. she said, Sissy, you need to update your online platform. It's, not, it's the year 2020. It needs to be a little more user friendly. So I investigated and I did that, and it cost money to do it because the way that I had the magazine online, it was free as far as how I had hosted it. So now I pay for the online version, but it's much more user friendly. So if somebody's, on the table of contents and there's an article they want to read, they could just click on the article and it takes them directly to that page instead of turning the page 20 times, because the magazine is 80 pages long. So that was one thing I did. Another investment that I made was I bought a collapsible little red wagon, and I keep it in my car with my magazines, and then I can go around to neighborhoods and bring the magazine, and deliver it to doors sometimes. So you just have to be creative and think outside of the box. And I had to rethink some of the places and how I was distributing the magazine. So using the free lending libraries that are in your neighborhoods, I've put half a dozen in each of those. I have done community events with the food drives in June and July, and then the pet food and supply drives that are coming up in the next 2 weeks. So I'm giving the readers, the audience, an opportunity to feel safe, to access a magazine. They could do a drive-by, say hello, I'll have my mask on, and I can give them the magazine.
Awesome. Well, Mary, believe it or not, we're at our time, and we want to thank you so much for coming on the program today. For our listeners that want to get in touch with you or learn more about Compass and Clock, how can they get more information?
They can reach me either through the website, which is compassandclock.com. They are welcome to email me at compassandclockmc for Mary Copeland @gmail.com. All my contact information is on the website. They can go to my Facebook page. All the contact info is in the magazine too.
Awesome. Well, our next show from the virtual Whedon Unleashed studio will be on Wednesday, November 18th, same day that Dan has his cyber webinar 2020, where our guest will be Madeline Pratt with Fearless in Training. Make sure you check out all the replays of Seattle Shrimp Tank at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle, or on any of your streaming services, including iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Remember to become a shark. We all start out as shrimps.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in a shrimp tank.